Hey guys, I'm going to talk you through this assignment. I'm hoping we're going to be able to talk about this in class, but if not, I want to have this video available so that you can go ahead and start working on this. So we're going to start talking about the Puritans this week, and we're going to be focusing on a couple of different things, but the first thing that we're going to focus on is this literary device called a conceit. And a conceit is something that was created in the sort of 1400s in England. And what it is essentially it's just a complicated, weird metaphor that pervades an entire poem. So it's a strange comparison between two things that you would never consider to compare. And they use this comparison throughout the entirety of a short piece of work in order to make some kind of comment. So the first thing that we're going to be looking at is a Puritan poem by a woman named Anne Bradstreet. Anne Bradstreet was a prolific personal writer. She wrote a lot for herself, but her brother-in-law published some of her work, and she was a little bit horrified by that. She didn't think it was right for a woman to be published. She didn't think that that was an acceptable thing for a Puritan woman. So I'm going to scroll down here a little bit, and I'm going to read you this poem. It's called The Author to Her Book, and then we're going to talk about the conceit that exists in this poem. Thou ill-formed offspring of my feeble brain, who after birth didst by my side remain, till snatched from thence by friends less wise than true, who thee abroad exposed to public view, made thee in rags, halting to the press to trudge, where errors were not lessened, all may judge. And thy return to my blushing was not small, my rambling brat in print should mother call. I cast thee by as one unfit for light, thy visage was so irksome in my sight, yet being mine own, at length affection would thy blemishes amend, if so I could. I washed thy face, but more defects I saw, and rubbing off a spot still made a flaw. I stretched thy joints to make thee even foot, yet still thou runnest more hobbling than is meet. In better dress to trim thee was my mind, but naught save homespun clothes in the house I find. In this array mongst vulgars mayest thou roam. In critics' hands beware thou dost not come, and take thy way where yet thou art not known. For if thy father ask to say thou hast none, and for thy mother, she is poor, which caused her thus to send thee out of door. So there are some things we're going to talk about here, first being the elements of Puritan poetry that we see happening here. Now, obviously, this is written with a very standard form, a very standard meter. You've got a very consistent rhyme, right? Following those rules would have been really important to Puritan writers at the time because they would have been emulating what was happening in England. So you can see complex sentence structure, you can see specified meter, you can see elevated diction, you can see all of those things happening in this poem. Some of the political things in terms of elements of Puritan poetry are the gender expectations and the gender roles that you see being manifested here. You can see her questioning the validity of something that she has written. You can see her comparing herself to a mother, that being kind of the only role that she is allowed in the Puritan world to fill. You also see at the end there that kind of lack of male responsibility in parentage, right? It's the mother's job to raise the children and to keep the home, whereas the father will be out making the money or doing farm work and those sorts of things, right? It's the man's job to do the physical labor, where it's the woman's job to do the sort of mental and emotional labor to keep the house running. And you can really kind of see that manifesting there at the end of the poem. So to help you understand the concept of the conceit, I have written out both sides of the conceit. Now, a conceit as a metaphor always has two sides, right? So remember, metaphor, you all read Romeo and Juliet theoretically, right? Juliet is the sun. There are two different sides to a metaphor. Juliet is one side, and she is being compared to the sun. So whenever you're identifying anything in a conceit or you're identifying anything in an extended metaphor, you have to be able to identify both sides and the meaning that is derived from both sides. So here, we see the comparison between the relationship between a mother and her offspring and the author and a piece of text they have written. So I've written here for you both sides of that conceit. So you can read that here about what this poem is translated as from the mother side of the conceit, and then how the poem is translated from the author side of the conceit. And you can see that in many ways they're saying the same things, but they're using that comparison to help the person who's reading the poem understand the comment that they're trying to make, right? The relationship between a mother and her child, however imperfect that child is a bond that can never be severed, right? Literally when you become a parent, you take your heart out of your chest and you let it walk around. And she's saying that she has those same feelings about something creative that she has done, that an author has those same kind of emotional qualities and those emotional attachments to something that they have written. So you can take a moment and read those, and hopefully that will be helpful. The homework for you is to look at what I have done here. And then what I would like for you to do is to read this prose sample. Now, this is a modern sample. This is from a play, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is a wonderful movie starring Jack Nicholson, but it was a play first. And this is a description of Nurse Ratched. And what I want you to do is to read over this and to consider what conceit is being made, right? So I want you to be able to identify Nurse Ratched is on one side. Give me the description of Nurse Ratched and her qualities. And what is she being compared to? And give me a written description of that object's qualities, right? So you're going to be using what I created up here for the author to her book. You're going to be mimicking that for what you are going to write for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Now, as you work on that, you're going to go to the Padlet link, which is posted in the lesson resources of this lesson, and you're going to write you're going to cut and paste what you have written onto the Padlet so that we can begin there tomorrow in class. You may work individually, in a pair, in a triumvirate, but no group may be larger than 4, and you need to make sure that on the Padlet you put the name of everyone who was involved in the creation of this. I hope this was helpful, and I'm hoping that you actually got to hear me talk about this and I got to take your questions. But technology being what it is, I want to make sure you have access to this. Thanks so much, guys.